It's official, folks. Joe Biden has signed the TikTok ban. And before anybody comes in here and goes, it's not necessarily a ban, they just have 9 months to divest it. You can dress it up in whatever you want. It's a ban. And he has signed it. Just as a side note, TikTok has actually been like the income for a lot of people. A lot of small businesses, content creators, including myself. So you literally just killed a bunch of jobs. Number one. Although, to be fair to the other side of that, TikTok has been trash lately and did change its creator rewards program to make it like nothing, so they're really not paying their creators. And they've been cracking down on content and being more censorious. I think that they were doing that as a way to try to prevent the ban. So I feel like TikTok actually was reacting to this by getting worse and worse and worse, by screwing over their creators, by not paying their creators, by taking down content. But nonetheless, us creators won't even have an opportunity to continue to yell at TikTok about their bad policies because it's going to get banned. Now, we know that Joe Biden is super committed to losing. He really, really wants Trump to win. So that's partially why he signed it. But another reason is because of lobbying. We know. Guys, in case you didn't know, but I think most of you do, we don't control our own government. Lobbyists do. Dark money groups do. The wealthy elite do. Corporations do. The military-industrial complex controls our government. So when you saw a lot of regular people going to DC to try to lobby Congress to not ban TikTok, they laugh in your face because they're like, wait, you're just a regular citizen without a lobbying firm? There were many people behind pushing for the ban, but one of them was this guy. I highly suggest everybody who cares about this read this article. Meta for the last couple years has been lobbying hardcore in order to get TikTok banned because they didn't want them as a competitor. They paid a right-wing lobbying firm millions and millions and millions of dollars to lobby over the last couple years to make sure that TikTok got taken down. Because you know that whole thing about how like we live in a free market? LOL! We don't live in a free market. No, we live in an oligarchy. We live in a plutocracy. We don't have free markets. We have corporatism and monopolies. And this happens all the time. It's just that some people are paying attention to it more now because of TikTok. But this isn't new. Monopolies all the time crush their competitors in our so-called free market. And it wasn't just Meta. It was APAC and other lobbying organizations. But here's a quick breakdown that TYT did.
Just today, we found out that Meta Platforms and its subsidiaries spent a record $7.6 million on lobbying the federal government in the first quarter of the year as the U.S. Congress advanced legislation that could ban Instagram's chief competitor, meaning TikTok. Meta's recent disclosure does not mention the TikTok ban issue directly, writes Sludge, but it says that the company lobbied Congress and the White House on homeland security topics, including discussions regarding cybersecurity, data security, encryption, platform integrity, election integrity, content policy, and terrorism, as well as issues related to voter suppression/interference, political ads, and misinformation policies. There seems to be a proxy war taking place as it pertains to TikTok. And by the way, 2 years ago, Taylor Lorenz over at the Washington Post had published a piece about how Facebook was working real hard through their lobbying to squash TikTok, placing op-eds and letters to the editor and major regional news outlets, promoting dubious stories about alleged TikTok trends that actually originated on Facebook, and pushing to draw political reporters and local politicians into helping take down its biggest competitor. Employees with Targeted Victory worked overtime or worked to undermine TikTok through a nationwide media and lobbying campaign, portraying the fast-growing app as a danger to American children and society, according to internal emails shared with the Washington Post. So this was all a Meta campaign 2 years ago to essentially squash TikTok. One of the directors of the firm wrote in a February 2022 email that Targeted Victory needs to get the message out that while Meta is the current punching bag, TikTok is the real threat, especially as a foreign-owned app.
They paid a right-wing lobbying firm to do a smear campaign on TikTok and lie and say that certain dangerous trends originated on TikTok when they actually originated on Facebook. Amazing. The TikTok ban is so much bigger than TikTok. Seeing people argue, seeing people blame one party or the other, this is not a left-right issue. This is a top-down issue. And this isn't just about the app. This is about your freedoms continuing to be eroded. Please do not fall in the trap of the left-right dichotomy, that kind of tribalism. This is taxation without representation. Despite the illusions of the left-right fighting all the time, Joe Biden and Donald Trump are huge recipients of APAC money. Democratic leader in the Senate, Chuck Schumer, huge recipient of APAC money. Same with Senator Mitch McConnell on the Republican side. And And same with both the leaders in the House, Hakeem Jeffries on the Democratic side, and the current Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, which, whew, look at that number. This comes right on the heels of Congress passing yet another resolution telling us what we are and aren't allowed to say. I'm sorry, you're not allowed to regulate speech. Passing resolutions trying to regulate Palestinian liberation slogans, but you don't get to tell Americans what we are and aren't allowed to say. This is literally an attack on the First Amendment. Where are all you free speech people? Passing resolutions saying that we're not allowed to criticize certain ideologies. We're not allowed to criticize a foreign government. Do you understand? Our Congress, all of them, bipartisan, Republicans and Democrats, are literally passing resolutions and laws like banning TikTok, telling Americans that we are not allowed to criticize a foreign government. Those are your free speech rights, folks. Even if you don't care about Gaza at all, how are you okay and comfortable with the fact that our government is telling you that you're not allowed to say what you want to say? How are you comfortable with the fact that we're not allowed to criticize a foreign government that our tax dollars are going to pay for their genocide? Listen to Scott Galloway here on MSNBC trying to make the case that actually it's the CCP.
Might sound paranoid, doesn't mean I'm wrong. I think we are being manipulated, specifically youth, to their frame for the world is TikTok. And if you look at TikTok, there are 52 videos that are pro-Hamas or pro-Palestinian for every one served on Israel. I think that we are being manipulated. I think Americans are easier to fool than convinced they've been fooled. But if I were the CCP, I'd be doing exactly the same thing.
First of all, let's note the propaganda trick he tried to do by saying that all pro-Palestinian protesters are pro-Hamas protesters. But second of all, there's literally no evidence for that. He just made that up. There is no evidence for the claim that TikTok was pushing pro-Palestinian content. In fact, quite the opposite. Because of our Congress and the ADL, TikTok for months has gone out of their way to crack down on any content talking about Gaza in order to appease those censors. They're just saying that because they're mad that Americans who just picked up their phones and started talking about what was happening in Gaza didn't agree with them. That's literally what that was. What happened with people talking about Gaza was organic. And the reason why there were more videos on it is because more Americans who have no voice in mainstream media, who have no voice in our corporate press, decided to take matters into our own hands and make content about it on TikTok. But they can't handle that. These people are authoritarians and they do not want dissent. And so instead of actually reckoning with the fact that the American people were saying things that they didn't agree with, they decided, no, we can't have that. You're not allowed to have free speech in this country. We need to crack down on it and just ban the app. And TikTok, to its great discredit, saw these attacks from mainstream media and did start to crack down on content talking about Gaza. And they did this, I believe, because they were trying to fight off a ban. They were hoping that if they started working with the ADL and they started censoring people talking about Gaza and cracking down on people's accounts, that the mainstream media and Congress would lay off of them. But that was never going to happen. TikTok, in my view, made a huge mistake by capitulating and bending to them and censoring pro-Palestinian voices because it was never going to be enough. It was never going to be enough because it's not just about this. It's also about anti-competitive practices in this country from places like Meta that didn't want to compete with TikTok. Our media and our government are literally telling you that you are not allowed to talk about things that aren't approved in our so-called free country. Bassem Youssef, who is an Egyptian-American comedian who recently was on Lex Friedman's podcast to talk about this kind of stuff, had the following to say, and it was so spot on.
Here's one thing about the power of the little guy that I am very sad about. Because, you see, I love America, by the way. I consider it my new home. And I want my kids to grow up here. I'm very grateful for the opportunity that I have in the United States. And I criticize the United States politics, and I criticize it out of love, the same way that I was criticizing what's happening with Egypt out of love. What is worrying for me is how the power of the little man is diminishing. It doesn't matter now who do you vote into power. They will not listen to you. They would listen to the people who paid them to be there. And it is very concerning because I can see the American democracy is turning, not even slowly, very rapidly into an oligarchy. I'm sure that all of the millions of people who are voting, they don't vote for the NRA. They don't vote for AIPAC. They don't vote for the pharmaceutical companies. They don't vote for the military industry complex. And yet, the people in power, they come in, they take your vote and my vote, and they are loyal to those people, not to us. And it is very, very, very concerning. Very concerning. And this is the danger of American policies, American politics and American democracies. It is dangerous because basically the vote becomes just like a ceremony that someone with the more like funding will get to power, and then he's not loyal to you. And this is why, for example, it is very disheartening for me to see that the Western media, Western press that used to be the beacon of freedom, are now using as mouthpieces. And it is funny how the New York Times, Nixon got angry in the New York Times in 1971 when they found leaks about him lying about the Vietnam War since the beginning. And now he hired the plumbers, the special unit in order to go in and find the leaks. This was Watergate, basically, because he was angry to see who leaked that, instead of fixing the problem. Now the New York Times have published the story about the rape that was a hoax that was written by Anna Schwartz, who's someone who have no experience. And now, when it was leaked, instead of them correcting themselves, they went in and they had their own investigation to see who leaked. The New York Times in 2003 became the mouthpiece for George W. Bush of the WMD. And now, as an American, I see that the New York Times is becoming the mouthpiece of a foreign country. Why do you do that?
One of the things that's really difficult to know is where to find the truth. It does seem that both sides use propaganda and both sides lie a lot.
Both sides.
But both sides, as in
Both Israel and Palestine, pro-Palestine, pro-Israel. There's a lot of lies.
I know, but I think it's a lot of inequality, man. There's like a lot of people on the internet, but like who have the mainstream media siding with?
Yeah, but thanks to social media.
Yes, thank God for social media, because now it's individuals. There are people. Yes, there are people. You're comparing BBC, New York Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal with just people with a TikTok account.
Yeah, who got more power in your view?
Now it is actually very, very fascinating to see the little man having that power over the media.
In fact, disproportionately so. This is my problem.
But you cannot call people with TikTok propagandists while people being paid to give you the news and they deliberately lie to you.
Putting aside Lex Friedman's like mad false equivalencies there between TikTok, which is just an app of regular people just making content, and mass media, mass corporate funded media that reaches all over the world to disseminate propaganda. The points that Yusuf made were just so accurate. We don't have a democracy. They take our vote, no matter who we vote in, and then they do the bidding of AIPAC, the military-industrial complex, big pharma, all of the industries that are not your interest. Your freedom is an illusion. Your free speech is an illusion. The side that you're voting for is an illusion because they all carry out the same agenda. Whether it's banning TikTok because they don't want to hear anybody talk about what's happening in Gaza, or take your tax dollars and pass bills that you oppose to fund the military-industrial complex so that weapons manufacturers can make billions off of genocide. All of these things are connected. No one wanted that FISA reauthorization, but they did it anyway. The moral of the story, besides the fact that Democrats and Joe Biden really want Trump to be president again, is that if you're an American, your voice does not matter. It does not matter. Your government hates you. We don't live in a free country. You don't have freedom of speech. At the very same time that they are taking down TikTok, they reauthorize FISA and strip more of your Fourth Amendment right to privacy. This is a lot bigger than TikTok. This is a blatant in-your-face reminder that as an American citizen, you don't have the rights that you think you do. Your freedoms and your privacy, they are all an illusion. And while you may think you live in a free country, as every day goes by and more of your rights get eroded and your quality of life gets worse and worse and worse, oligarchs be sitting in their mansions after eroding more of your freedom saying, "Nice job, team."